Hello again, everybody. Dr. Glenn with Infinite Wellness, coming back at you with another part of our video series today. Got another great question to answer for you. Hopefully this gives you some good information, or at least gives you something to look at, think about, maybe with some of you who are coming into the holidays. And please like our videos and share them. Love it if you subscribe.
So today it says, we all learned about the food pyramid in school. Should we follow what the food pyramid says?
Oh, wow. Okay, well, there's obviously, I've looked into this a little bit, played with it today, and there's been a lot of modifications to the food pyramid over time. But originally, this was a concept about 1972, kind of reformulated, redone about 74, and it's been changed multiple times over the last several decades. But as a whole, the food pyramid was set up as a standard even back in the 70s, based off of what we thought was a necessity on how we needed to eat certain quantities of certain foods. So most of you have seen at least some version of the food pyramid. The old standard when I was a young fella back in the 70s was a small triangle, and it had, back when I first saw it, had about 4 or 5 different delineations, markings as to what we should eat, starting with the most at the bottom of the triangle and working their way up this pyramid to the least. And after looking at a lot of the data and seeing a lot of what we've seen over the years, we realized, or at least those of us in alternative healthcare, those of us talking nutrition, those of us in functional medicine, realized that what they had back then and what they've kind of held to is a very carbohydrate-rich diet. And most of us are wondering today, well, if I follow the food pyramid, why am I not healthy? Well, with a very extremely high carbohydrate diet, high sugar, carbs break down into sugars, high sugary diet, it's very difficult to maintain a healthy weight. With the food pyramid, you almost need one more block under the very bottom of nothing but exercise to try to keep up with what they've put out there today for their standards. The majority of the food being grains, and in particular, not healthy grains. Now, I will say this. There are some grains that are healthier. There are some grains that are not as good. There are compound starches. But the majority of this was a very carbohydrate-rich diet, where at any given point, up to 60, 70, even 80%, when we got into things that the food pyramid changed into, like my chart or my plate. We looked at stuff where you were looking at almost 60, 70, 80% of your daily intake was some type of a carbohydrate or sugar. Obviously, if we have that kind of intake of carbohydrates and sugars, we're going to have a hard time maintaining a healthy body weight and burning that many calories. With that mindset, I don't believe that the food pyramid has been updated appropriately over the years to give us a better idea of what we should be eating to maintain a healthy weight, to maintain a healthy balance, to replenish muscle tissue, and all these other things. To get into the science of that a little bit, to make this a little simpler, one of the lowest portions or the least amount of portions on our pyramid oftentimes is our proteins. Carbohydrates, which we just mentioned, when the body processes those and breaks those down, whether it's a heavy starch or even into your lighter carbohydrates like breads and grains and cereals, all break down into sugars. Proteins, however, are not broken down into sugar. They are broken down into amino acids. If I want to be a healthy individual, then my job is to maintain muscle mass, to promote muscle growth, to keep muscle on my system. Regardless of my weight, I need an appropriate amount of muscle mass, and I cannot do that without amino acids. Those are the building blocks to muscle, not sugars. Sugars are the building blocks, pretty much. They're usable energy, and are the building blocks basically for fats. The more sugars we process, the more we store, the more fat we maintain, whereas with proteins, we're really just dealing in amino acids. So the food pyramid is almost kind of upside down, or my chart really is way skewed in favor of carbohydrates, which we should not be eating that many of. Now, I will say this, the new movement a lot in America today is to move more towards ketogenic diets or carnivore. I disagree with that as well. Man is not a carnivore, regardless of what you'd like to think. That's kind of neat and fancy, and yeah, I'd like to be a cougar too, or a lion, or something large, but we are not. We are omnivores. Omnivore meaning all. Omni meaning everything. We are capable of digesting and eating and processing and getting valuable nutrition out of multiple different food sources, not just meat. So ketogenic diets I'm not a fan of. I do not like to be in ketosis. I don't believe that's a healthy way to live your life long term. There are weight loss benefits to it if you are dire straits and need to lose weight quickly, but it's certainly not a healthy way to live, nor is something where it's strictly carnivore. So as an omnivore, I need to learn to balance. Often in my weight loss classes, I talk about this, and I'm more partial to percentages. Many years ago, there was a diet came out known as the Zone. They were probably the closest thing to what we were looking for, only they didn't take into account, more of the healthier foods and Mediterranean type diet, but they did venture into percentages. And as a normal functioning adult, what I would like to see for most people is protein sources being about 50% of your daily intake. Half. That's quite a bit. So half of everything you eat in caloric intake should be some type of healthy protein. Now, of course, we want to avoid proteins that are full of, overly fatty substances, but a wide range of proteins are a necessity. Meat, dairy, nuts, beans, and all of these have benefits. I'm sure if you've watched enough of the internet, if you watched some of the guru doctors out there, a lot of them will talk about beans and other things having high lectins. You are going to hear about things that throw off our insulin balance, but as a whole, protein needs to be almost half of your diet. Now, that being said, you don't need protein as half of your diet if you don't exercise at all. If you're not challenging the muscle systems of your body, obviously we don't need to fill ourselves with a bunch of protein to try to restore that muscle. Now you're just being hard on your kidneys. But you should be doing enough exercise that 50% is a good number to look for. So on average, that's 2, maybe 3 good workout sessions in a week, 20 to 30 minutes, hopefully in a high intensity interval training type thing where you're combining muscle work and weighted exercise or resistance exercise with some cardio and some movement. That way we keep our heart healthy, our lungs healthy, and we break down our muscles enough that the body requires proteins broken down into amino acids to repair our muscle system. The rest of that dietary pyramid, of course, is your carbohydrates. We do need carbohydrates, and I believe that our energy sources come from those. We start throwing things off like our endocrine system and our thyroid glands if we don't eat any carbohydrates. But we're looking at maybe 30 to 35% now. And then the last 10, 15, 20% of that pyramid needs to be our dietary fats. In particular, good fats, not garbage, not trash oils, really good, healthy fats. Omega-3 fatty acids, things like flaxseed, fish, things like olive oil and avocado oils, good healthy oils, coconut oil, all good things for us. Not our heavier other corn oils, canola oils, those are all bad. They bring into a whole concept of non-decent dietary fats, more saturated or processed fats. We do not want those. So we do still need plenty of good fats, 15 to 20% of our daily intake, so that we feed our brain. The fat-free craze of the 80s showed us proof positive that low-fat diets were a bad idea. Everybody was a little stupider back then. I think most of you who grew up in my generation, Gen X, we remember the 80s. There was a small mindset there that kind of lowered, I think our IQ went down just a hair. And I believe part of that was the fat-free craze. Everybody went fat-free. Not a good thing. Dietary fats are extremely healthy, and we do need good fats to feed our brains. So the food pyramid and all these other, my chart and other things that have branched off of it and have grown with the ages have still left us at a really bad disadvantage. Thinking that we need more grains and pastas and complex carbohydrates, as well as adding in fruit, which is also a carb, and vegetables, which are also a carbohydrate. If that's the primary source of all of our food intake, we're going to gain weight, we're going to be a little bit slower, we're going to be sluggish, and we're definitely not going to be as healthy in restoring our muscle tissue. We need muscle tissue. So more of a 50, 35, 15 kind of breakdown seems to be ideal, where, like I said, 50% is protein, 35% carbs, 15% healthy dietary fats. All the other stuff that comes in with all of that is just kind of mixing and matching into those things. So people ask, well, what about dairy? Well, technically that's in your protein category. If you're eating good, healthy dairy, milk, butter, yogurt, cheese, those things are all part of your protein sources. All of those are proteins. They all have casein predominantly as your protein, and it is necessary. We would like to have some of that in our diet. It just doesn't need to be a massive amount, but that does need to be part of our protein intake, just as the meats and everything else would be. Eggs, same concept. So lots of things can go into that. When we talk carbs, we're talking all kinds of different carbohydrates, but we want to keep our processed grains to a minimum and try to eat more things like fruits and vegetables, which are carbohydrates. Heavy starches like potatoes and rice. The reason we like those, I like those personally, and I believe they're good for us, is because they're an extremely complex starch. And a starch takes a lot of energy to break down. Yes, they still break down into simple sugars, but over a lot more steps and a lot more time, our body burns a lot more energy breaking them down. So they are a good thing to keep us in a healthy balance, check our insulin, those things. So things like rice and potatoes, I believe, are quite good for us, but again, up in that 35%. And then don't forget your dietary fats, in particular your healthy ones. Try to cook with olive oil. Try to incorporate things like the good oils into your diet, as well as dietary fats, which some of that will come just from eating your proteins. If you're eating healthy proteins like salmon, tuna, those things are full of omega-3 fatty acids. Most of your seafoods are. So those are very healthy. Shrimp, scallops, all the above. So that's really what we're shooting for, I believe. I think our food pyramid has done us a great disservice. We really need to pay a little bit more attention as we look at these things and really adopt a more paleocentric type diet where we're looking at kind of a Mediterranean concept with healthy oils, healthy fats, good proteins, and then just enough carbs to sustain healthy energy, which should come from, like I said, healthy vegetables and fruits if possible, little bits of grains here and there. So that's my take on the food pyramid. Hope that helps clear things up a little bit. Please ask questions if any of this doesn't make sense or you'd like to know more or why I believe this way. Please feel free, and we'll do more video or I'll come back at you. You can even ask questions and I'll make sure I get an answer to you somehow.